Well, welcome to another TerranScapes video. This video features a completed custom work project for a customer who games in 15mm Flames of War, and he requested that I recreate a set of vineyards that I had done previously. Now, the previous set of vineyards had all been based on one large base with multiple rows on the base, and he thought it might be more useful for him to have them based individually so that he could place them, say, on a terrace, stepped terrace, or he could, space their widths as he desired. So I made, they're not all shown here, I made 16 of these bases. These are about 6 inches long, and each base features two pairs of vines on them, and I've included Flames of War stand here just to give you a sense of the scale. The intention was to have the vines be about man height, but there is a slight rise that I put a little lift there to show like maybe the earth has been piled around the vine lines to I don't know, as usually in farming they seem to scoop the dirt up to the plants. In any case, I modeled them very similarly to what I had done before. I used slightly thinner vines here, and I decided this time to try adding a few grapes. So I added some clusters of purple scattered throughout the stands, and I think it gives a pretty believable feel, especially as the purple flowers that I used to represent the grapes are clusters of small bits, and so they tend to actually, in some places, really even look like clusters of small balls of grapes hanging on the vines. I didn't put them on all of the vines. Some of the vines I did not add grapes to. Maybe they had already been picked or they were not fruiting, but just to give it a little bit of variation in appearance. And here you can see a close-up of the armature, the wire armatures that make up the support structure for the vines themselves, or the vines themselves. Some of the close-up of the thread, which looks very believable at this scale, and of course some of the clusters of grapes, which is represented by the purple foliage. The posts are wood and are drilled into the base for added security. You can see the holes there. And then I've used thread to wind around the posts to make the supports for the vines to be riding on, and these are really pretty solid as a result. The thread actually helps to hold everything straight, and the wire foundation underneath for the vines provides a pretty good armature to use for the foliage on top to give the grapes the effect. I left the bases bare. Primarily, in the sense that I didn't flock them, so that he could place that on any table and it would match, and then you could have a, sort of, if you look at this, for instance, you could have had a green area in between the boards where maybe it's mown, and then you have the actually tilled area around the grapes where they're keeping it relatively weed or vegetation free. Although I did put in just a scattering of a couple small bits of vegetation around, partly just to break it up visually and to give the sense that, no garden is weed-free, and so I've just thrown in just a couple there just to break that up. Anyway, I wanted to give you this shot of it, a quick look at it, and I have another custom piece which I'd like to show you that is in progress. Here you see the early work for a board set for which is going to be a display board, and the theme for the display board is the movie Avatar. The customer is building a wood elf set for fantasy for Warhammer, and he's going to paint them in theme to match the movie, and he wanted a tree of, I believe it's the Tree of Souls, put on the board as a somewhat of a focal piece. So here's the Tree of Souls completed at this point, and what I've done, now it's just mounted on the cup here just because it's easier for me to handle it and move it around. The tree is Woodland Scenics armature, and that bright background gives you a nice silhouette of the actual armature itself. In which case then I've individually rolled each of these in green stuff, painted them white, attached them to the tree, and then green stuff the attachments. The Tree of Souls doesn't have very many pictures of it on the web, so I kind of took some liberty with it, although when you do see some of the pictures, obviously the tendrils are hanging fairly straight, and there's quite a few of them. Now, the armature has a limited number of contact points at the apex of each of the branches, so what I did is I attached 3 or sometimes 4 of the vines to each of the contact points, which gives it a little bit more of a dense look than if I just simply hung one vine off of each of the points. So this is going to be mounted on a hill, and the hill I didn't want to make too tall because I'll show you in a second I've got some much larger pieces that are going to provide a much higher focal point. But the tree, of course not with the cup, the tree will sit on the apex of this multi-tiered hill, and then the hill will be freestanding so that the customer can move the hill around on the board as he needs to, maybe accommodate certain models or other features. The board is going to end up being a 20 by 20 display board, and it's going to have 2 10-inch sections in the back. One of the 10-inch sections is going to feature the floating mountain that you see here. Now, the mountain has been roughly carved, and as was suggested by a previous customer, I really appreciate some of the feedback that I get from some of the videos. One of the things I'd had problems with, I'll set this down for a second so I can sort of point to it, is that in stacking the foam, I ended up with these lateral lines where the foam met and created a seam that was partly due to the adhesive creating sort of a temperature gradient when the foam is melted, that it would sit out a little bit, so you could end up seeing them in the finished product. Very hard to correct that. One of his suggestions was to mount them vertically and build it sort of sideways, if you will, and then when I did more up and down perpendicular cuts, it would hide that seam. Now I need to go in and do a little finish spackling in some of these areas, and this needs some cleaning up before it gets painted, but I think overall it is going to produce a better effect than stacking the foam laterally. So a tip for those of you out there who might try projects similar to this. The mountain will be sitting elevated maybe 5 to 7 inches off of the baseboard, and I'm going to have 2 waterfalls pouring out of it. This will be one of the waterfall outlets, and the waterfalls will hide the supporting structure that will help to keep this elevated. Coming off the side will be 2 vines hiding the supporting structure for this mountain. I'm going to tip the camera here so I can keep these perpendicular. I don't know, that looks weird against the sky. But in any case, you'll see that there'll be another smaller mountain off to the side floating up above it, and then this will provide some additional space for mounting, or for displaying some of the other models, perhaps some of the more prominent characters, elite units, and it's that nature. In the back, it's going to have foliage in a semicircular arc around it that will come up maybe another 3 inches off of the back, so that will provide a little bit of a visual backdrop for the miniatures and kind of help give the tops some of that lush feel that the Avatar environment, the oh gosh, I can't remember the planet now. Anyway, Pandora, that the Pandora environment has, which is fairly tropical. I'm going to use a mix of clump foliage and jungle vegetation, as the scenes in Avatar were not exclusively deciduous or jungle. It was sort of a blend of the two, and so I'll be looking to emulate that in the finished product with some moss and vines hanging off of the rock bottom here surrounding some of the waterfalls. So that just gives you a little preview of a project that's underway, and this project should be moving along the next couple weeks, so I'll probably give you another preview of it mid-progress, and then of course I'm happy to show you the final work when it's done. Anyway, thanks for watching, and keep your eyes tuned for new TerranScapes videos in the future.